Welcome to our business webinar program presented by Bank of America. Today's session is Countdown to Launch, and we will learn what a go-to-market strategy includes, why you need one for your new product or service, and the simple but impactful tools for developing one for your product or service. I'm Desiree Brown. I'm Senior Manager of Digital Education and Content here at the Tory Burch Foundation. And I am so excited to be here with Ren Peir. Ren is a marketing expert with over 15 years experience, and she has worked in marketing, go-to-market strategy, sales, and business development for a variety of brands and a variety of industries, including health tech. And after Ren's presentation, we're going to have a lot of time for Q&A. So be sure to ask your questions in the Q&A box, and we'll get to as many as we can. We encourage you to take notes. And as a reminder, today's session will be recorded. So please watch your inboxes for the replay link, as well as some wonderful resources that Ren is going to leave behind for all of us as we think about how to launch our new and exciting products. And so with that, Ren, over to you.
Thank you so much, Desiree, and so excited to be here today, and really just excited that all of you are taking this opportunity to really grow and embrace your businesses. So without further ado, today's presentation is on go-to-market strategy. Oops, a little bit more about me. My name again is Ren. I use she, her pronouns, and I have 15 years or more of experience in marketing and go-to-market strategy. I've worked for brands like Etsy, where I did brand marketing, General Mills, where I did channel strategy, Michael Kors, where I did market research, Verizon, where I did direct marketing, Oscar Health, where I did product marketing, and my current role at Violet, where I am in charge of all of our marketing and sales operations. This is my email. We'll send it out afterwards as well. Feel free to reach out to me. I am taking on consultant calls, and as part of my collaboration with Tory Burch Foundation, I'm offering free consultations to talk about your business and how we might grow it. And this is also my website. Feel free to navigate over there. All right. So today, actually, let me just minimize the screen so I can see my presentation. All right. Today, we're going to go through the nuts and bolts of a go-to-market strategy, how to build one, how to maintain one. Throughout each step, we'll go through practical examples of how that might come to life. And I will also have some take-home templates for you to take and customize and utilize for your own businesses. At any point, please drop questions into the Q&A, and we will definitely try to get through them as much as possible. All right, so some quick caveats here. So my presentation is going to be a little high-level overview, and it's not going to be, of course, applicable in every aspect to your business. So take that with a grain of salt, but I will try to talk about situations in which it'll apply to maybe bigger businesses, smaller product launches, or overall strategies as we go along. But if you need any clarification, of course, feel free to ask. So let's have a shared understanding first. What is a go-to-market strategy? This is the definition that the Googles told me, but it is a really great encapsulation of a go-to-market strategy from my experience. So it's a plan that details how an organization, company, brand, service can engage customers to convince them to buy their product or service and to gain a competitive advantage. And so I bolded engage with customers because this is really the important part of a strategy of go-to-market is how do you actually reach the people you should be talking to? How do you define who you're talking to? And what are the right ways and timings and messaging that you can utilize to actually reach your customers and engage them? A go-to-market strategy also includes tactics related to pricing, sales, and channels, the buying journey, new product or service launches, product rebrands, or product introductions to a new market. So again, kind of my caveat is all of these different situations will apply to a go-to-market strategy. So really try to keep that in mind that yours might be a little bit different than maybe what I'm explaining on the screen, but all of these relate to a go-to-market strategy no matter how big or small. Okay, so how do we get there? These are the steps that I have identified from my experience as part of really making a robust and strategic go-to-market plan. And so you might find different iterations of this just by a simple Google search, but this is based off of my experience, what I think really works well. So the first step here really is positioning. And really what that is identifying a mission statement, purpose, and positioning statement. So this is the one step that is a slight deviation from an overall go-to-market strategy, but I wanted to highlight this step because I do think it's quite crucial to build the foundation and infrastructure for actually having a well-oiled marketing strategy. But really, it's important to understand what is the purpose of your company, what's the vision, and what are you trying to achieve in the world? And how are you well positioned in the market to kind of have a mind space in your customer's mind for your company? And so what that practically looks like as an example. So for Violet, this is the mission statement that I built for our company. Violet is on a mission to build health equity. We envision a world where every human receives equitable healthcare, inclusive of their race, sexual orientation, gender, ability, language, citizenship, and more. And so what this does is it really helps us understand how we show up in the world, how a customer understands us, both internally and externally. This is an example of a positioning statement that Amazon uses. So for consumers who want to purchase a wide range of products online with quick delivery, Amazon is a one-stop online shopping site. I'm going to stop there. So a positioning statement could actually be a whole presentation in and of itself. And hopefully at this point, you will have had a pretty clear positioning statement identified for your own brand or business. If not, feel free to talk to me. I'm happy to talk about position statements all day long. But the important thing to identify here is what it does is it quickly has a customer understanding what you offer, but it also identifies a key element that's a little bit different about your business. And so for Amazon, I thought this really captured it well because it is an online shopping site, point blank period, but also it's a one-stop online shopping site. And that is kind of the differentiating factor for Amazon because you can pretty much buy anything there. So all that being said is this is the foundation that will ground all of the work you're going to do and all of the strategy work you're going to build as we go through the go-to-market strategy, keeping in mind your mission, your purpose, and your positioning to really then help you hone in on what comes next. So next step here is target and persona. So who is your target audience? Who are you really building services and products for? Some of you might have actually built your business around a very clear definition of who your target audience is, right? Maybe you have a wedding consultant business and you live in Ohio. So you have a pretty clear target audience there, which is folks who are getting married in Ohio or your city. And that works really well for you. Maybe you have a product or service that you thought was actually really great for a target audience, but you're not really gaining the traction that you thought you would. Maybe there's something there where you're actually serving a completely different customer segment than you originally set out to serve. And that's also okay. Some of the best businesses are ones that can pivot quickly once they have learnings and understandings that are a little bit different than what they originally set out to do, but they change, they iterate, and they test and learn, and they keep learning and growing with their audiences as they continue to build their business. So in defining a target audience, there's really two key sectors here. The first is the demographics, right? So these are your basic things like gender identity, age range, geography, marital status, maybe income, so on and so forth. So that's who they are. And then there's psychographics. So this is belief systems, values, goals, attitudes, so on and so forth. And this really influences why your customer might buy. So kind of this mix of the two is how you will begin to define your target audience. So for example, demographics, maybe 35, woman, salary of 65K, lives in Cincinnati, Ohio. And psychographically, maybe we know they're about to get married, enjoys a good deal or loves a good value over quantity, gets advice from her friends, and really enjoys supporting local and small businesses. Most importantly is psychographics are really how we build personas in the marketing world, and that's where we usually focus. And demographics can change here and there. There's a lot of correlation, but it's not always the same. So maybe these psychographics have a lot of common elements around people who have very different demographics. Maybe they have very different incomes or different age ranges. That's also okay. It's just kind of a way to kind of break out the ways in which you might think about your target audience. And it also changes based on campaigns. So we'll keep talking about it as we go along. So building your personas. Why does this even matter? And I will talk about what a persona even is. But first, I want to talk a little bit about why is this important? For a lot of companies, it's important because it helps with spending your ad dollars. So efficient ad spend is what marketers think about all the time. We want to optimize our return on investment or our ROI. So honing in on the targeting and making sure that the promotions I'm offering or the new announcement I'm talking about or the key value prop or product or service I'm launching really resonates with this specific person so that I can be really efficient with my communications. And I also don't turn away customers who might not care about this message at all. And that would actually be a burnt kind of lead. I can also tailor my messaging way more efficiently. So I can have more convincing messaging. I can talk to kind of the life stage they're in or talk to their attitudinal beliefs a little bit more and hit on their pain points. It also helps me iterate on my products and experiences. So maybe I have a website and I want to understand how to better optimize my website for this person. Or maybe I have a service that I haven't even built yet, but I'm learning about my target audience and I'm building new services for them that I didn't even think of offering before. This also helps you with your channel strategy. So basically, where am I going to market myself? Am I going to use, email? Am I going to use Instagram? So on and so forth. And we'll talk about a buyer journey and a channel strategy in a little bit. And then finally, for a lot of companies, a persona actually helps to unify a company. So I know Southwest, I don't know if they do this anymore, but at their headquarters, they have big posters of their key personas. They have names, they have backstories, they have, desires, wants, needs, and it really helps every member at that company understand, okay, like this is why we're here. We are really trying to serve this customer. This is why the work we're doing actually matters. And so that's also a really great internal strategy if you've got teammates on, employees to unify everybody on the same page. Okay, so what does a persona might look like? So this is one example. You will create a name. So Ashling is this fictional character. You will have maybe a photograph, and then you have a name for the persona. So this one's a young family's persona. So I'm assuming that wherever this company, whoever's persona this is that I grabbed, has various different personas, and this one's the young family one. And so we've made up this story around Ashling, who she is, what her interests are, what her goals are, what are her finances, and then some of the marketing channels that she actually utilizes. So this is a helpful way just to begin to kind of build some empathy around who are you talking to. So when you're writing your blog posts or working on your email campaigns, it's a good way to kind of keep in mind, okay, this is the person I'm talking to. This is actually another example of a persona that I created for Violet. So we were building an onboarding process and an onboarding experience within our web platform for providers. And we had various different types of providers, and they all have very different needs and wants and goals and motivations. And so I built this for our designers and our product managers to begin to understand, okay, what should we be saying and doing as we're going through this onboarding process and building the flow? And so this is, how are they feeling? What are they needing? What are their motivations? And what are potential questions or stumbling blocks that they might have about Violet? So this is just kind of another way to frame it. The key thing about showing both of these personas that I want to communicate is there's really no wrong way or right way to build a persona. It's all about what's going to actually achieve the goals that you want to and what's right for your needs. So a simple persona might do really well, or something a little bit more robust and complicated and built out also might do well. Maybe you just have one persona, that's also fine. Or maybe you have 5. Again, it's really just going to be tailored to what your needs are. I'm sorry if you hear an alarm or a siren. That's the background that I'm in right now. Okay, so how do I even figure this out? How do I go about building my target audience? Who am I talking to? And how do I build out a persona? Well, there are many ways to do this. And of course, working with a consultant who's done this before really, really helps. But here's some simple ways to do this. So if you already have some customers, send out a survey, right? You can build a simple little survey and ask them to fill it out. A lot of folks will give a $5, promo code or coupon. At Oscar, we used to actually send out Amazon gift cards to ask folks to fill out a survey for us. It worked really well for us. You can also do one-on-one interviews with existing customers, and this gives you a little bit more of a robust picture. And further down the line, when we talk about the buyer journey, that will also be really important. You can also use any analytics you might have. So I know Instagram, when you have a business profile, they tell you a little bit about the demographics of who's visiting and interacting with your content the most. So you can start to use some of that. If you have emails, you can start to also understand like, okay, like a little bit more about your customer. If they filled out any profiles with you, again, that's all information that you have to begin to build out your targeting and understand a little bit more about your customer. And you can also conduct focus groups. So maybe you have a product that you actually really don't know who it's going to serve. Maybe you have an idea, but you can kind of build an informal focus group or a formal focus group, work with companies who do that or consultants who do that, and really begin to understand like, who does this resonate with? What are some attitudinal or psychographic beliefs about why my customer or my service, sorry, my product and service resonates with them? And then again, final way, this is actually more expensive. I wouldn't suggest this route first, but you can also collect data from market research companies. And if anybody needs a list of market research companies, feel free to reach out to me. Okay. So we kind of have an understanding now of who we're talking to and why. And now we want to build out our value proposition. So what is a value proposition? Very simply put, it is or are the reasons why your customer should buy your product. And that can have a whole range of reasons. But some of the key questions you want to ask yourself when you are building out your value props, and this is a very important step in the process of really understanding, why does your customer want to work with you? Why should your customer buy your product? So some things to ask yourself when you're doing this is, well, what makes my product or service different from others? Maybe it's you. Maybe it's you as a founder, and that's what makes your product or service very different. Maybe it's your experience, or maybe it's a different offering that you have that's different from others. Or it doesn't even have to be so different necessarily from your competitors, although sometimes that does help. Sometimes even just being a super hyper local business really helps make you be different from others. What need or desire are you fulfilling for your customer? So that's again going back to kind of the persona building, which is understanding what's your customer wanting in their day-to-day lives, what do they need or desire, and how are you meeting those needs? And then finally, what's the pain point or problem that you're solving for your customer? Maybe you've identified a really key problem and you've built an app to solve that problem. So then beginning to understand how you're really kind of like filling those gaps there. So let's do a practical example really quickly. So let's take Joe's Insurance. Here's a very simplified value proposition kind of spreadsheet that I like to use. So in the first column here is, what's your value prop pillar? And then the second pillar here, or sorry, column here is about who then is that relevant to? And then the full message. So as an example, maybe Joe's Insurance says that things that differentiate him from other businesses are the business is experienced. Joe is very experienced, Joe is local, and Joe is very fast. Again, your pillars don't necessarily have to be single words necessarily. They could be phrases, they could be whole sentences. Just for the expediency here, I wrote a single word. And then you're starting to align, who does this actually matter to? So let's say I have a persona of Bob or a target of Bob, and he is 60 plus. He's very skeptical of new businesses. So this value proposition is very relevant to Bob. He's experienced and he wants to know about that. So a full message here might be, with over 30 years of experience, Joe brings expertise and wisdom so that you can rest easy, you're getting the best deal. Great. Local. This also might be relevant for Bob. And the full message here might be, our agency only employs folks who've grown up around the block. We know our neighborhood. And then finally, fast. Maybe this is actually for Donna, who is 35, a new mom, and very, very busy and juggling a lot. The message here would be, a quote never takes more than 30 minutes, so you can get on with your busy day. So you can see how now we are taking things that are relevant to our business, so these value propositions, matching them against people who it might actually matter to, and then building out kind of our messaging strategy. So you can keep it as simple as this. I also find that if you're juggling a lot of different channels, let's say you have a lot of social media, you have emails, you have a website, this is a helpful way to kind of organize a lot of your copywriting. So you might actually write out some messages that work well in social media, have a different column for that, change kind of how you're talking about it in little subtle ways. That way you have almost like a grab and go bag of really great copy that you're already kind of ready to use in whatever format you might need. Okay, so after your value propositions, we are now going to go on a buyer journey. So the purpose of a buyer's journey is to help you visualize how your brand or company interacts with your customer at all stages of their buying process. And I really want to call out it's about their buying process. So again, you want to meet your customer where they're at. So let's say they're doing a really big purchase like a car or a home. That's a very convoluted journey, and you want to understand all of the different steps that that person is taking, and you might not even realize all of the different steps that are going into that buying process. So it helps you meet your customers where they're at, and it helps you build empathy for them and tailor the experience of your brand or company to their journey. I want to caveat here again that this might be a little bit too much for some companies, or maybe it's not enough for some companies, and that's totally fine. I think just take this with a grain of salt and tailor it to what's relevant for your company and what stage you're at. But even going through this process and just kind of thinking through a buyer's journey, no matter if you use it later on or not, is going to be helpful for building empathy and understanding your customer. So we're going to go through a really quick example here. So this is a journey map for emotional Eric, and he is shopping for a new car. So you might have a little bit of a blurb about like what's going on with Eric. Maybe you have some breakdowns of their expectations. Also, kind of pausing here, this is where customer interviews really come into play. So if you've already interviewed some of your customers and you understand kind of what's the journey that they went through when they found your product or service, this might be a good way to build it. Also, for a lot of the B2B businesses out there, this is a really helpful tool because you begin to understand what are the steps that your B2B customer will go through in searching out for your service. So for Eric here, is that his name? Yes, Eric here. These are the steps to buying a car, and this is what this person who built this map has identified. So he's going to go through the steps of consideration, which might take a week. Then he's going to explore, which might take 2 months. Then he's going to compare, which might take a month. Test, negotiate, so on and so forth. And the journey might look different for every type of product out there, right? If you're buying a piece of clothing, it's probably not at all like this, right? Sometimes it's an impulse purchase. Or if you are buying a home, it's going to look a little bit different. If you are let's say you're an HR executive at a large, company and you're seeking a service or a consultant, that journey also might look a little bit different. So based on who your buyer is, you want to tailor these steps. And then you want to start mapping out like what are the things and places that this person is going to begin to kind of embody this step. So for instance, Eric here under consider, he's watching TV, he sees yourcarnext.net, and he sees an ad on Facebook. And as he's exploring, he might go to websites. As he's comparing, he might read reviews and reports on XYZ magazines and websites. He might also talk to his family and friends, so on and so forth, right? You get kind of the point is you really begin to map out what are the actions and things that Eric is doing to get through each step. And then this part is where you really build in a little bit of empathy. So again, you might want to, and this kind of comes from your own knowledge and maybe from customer interviews, but you want to start understanding what are some of the emotions that they're going through, right? So I like that I can save cars and a list is automatically made, and that's under explore. And maybe that's when he's on your website. Or even further down the line, this mobile app is missing a lot of features, and maybe he's really frustrated with that. Or further down the line, I wish all the car dealerships were shown on a single map so I can plan my route. So you're kind of beginning to really put yourself in his shoes and understand throughout each step, what are some pain points? What are some seamless, like really delightful moments? What are some things that are frustrating? How are you feeling? Are you feeling happy, joyful, sad, frustrated, upset, overwhelmed, maybe? And this begins to kind of build out a map for you to say, like, okay, how do I actually make this experience better if I am a car comparison uh, website? All right. So after you've kind of gone through who your person is, what about your company really matters to them, how you would speak to it, and what is the journey that your person is really going on or your customer is really going on, this is where you begin to build out your channel strategy. Okay. So getting kind of to the meat and bones of today's presentation is really, how do I choose all the right places to talk to my customer? How do I begin to build out that plan? Where do I put my efforts, right? These are all very, very big questions that even marketers with years and years of experience sometimes struggle answering. And so we'll all go on this journey together. All right, again, where do I launch? So this little blurb, we don't need to go into detail about what the actual things say, but it's just showing that as we've gotten more technologically advanced, the places that we can do marketing or reach our customers are exponentially exploding. There is just an overwhelming amount of places and things you can do as a business, as a company, to really reach your customer. And I get it. It's very overwhelming. It's the reason why I have a job. But so I like to think about it in two buckets just to simplify everything. To me, this makes the most sense. Other marketers might think about it in different ways, but I'm just sharing with you what's worked well for me. So I think about it in owned channels and paid channels. And so owned channels is kind of what it sounds like. These are properties or channels that you really own. So as an example, that would be your website, a landing page you might create on your website, SEO, so that's search engine optimization. So that's a channel that you can utilize that you have control over to some degree. Blog or content marketing, email, SMS, aka text messaging, webinars you might run, seminars, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. Again, those are your social media channels. But these are channels that you've opened up yourself, you've created, they're free for the most part, and you have full control over them. So owned channels. And then you have here paid channels. So some of them are actually the same thing, like Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, etc., but you can pay for ads. So paid social media is how I truncate them all. You have SEM, which is basically purchased search ads. So in essence, when somebody Googles a word, you can actually bid on that keyword and your result can actually show up. And so when you see a Google search, that's the paid results. Affiliate marketing, so that's when you utilize bloggers, for instance, to have promo codes or offer discounts and have little ads on their website. That's why recipes online are so long. You have to scroll through a bunch of storytelling. It's because they're trying to build up as much ad space as possible to meet their affiliate needs. Influencers, you can work with agencies or individually with influencers and reach out to them and pay them to basically talk about your product or service. Display networks, this is a little bit more outdated, but this was more popular probably 10, 12 years ago, where you could purchase ad space on these big display networks across the internet, and they would display your ad. So on the side, if it's like a long ad, small square, so on and so forth. Direct mail. This is something that people forget about, but you can definitely still do. I actually did this for Verizon for many years, but direct mail, you can reach people you want to talk to with long form content or just, a mail piece. And then of course, traditional things like TV, radio, out of home is things like bus wraps or, flyers that you might see, so on and so forth. On the bottom here, I have PR and partnerships a little separate. They're not technically owned channels and they're not technically paid either. And I'll get into the details of why. We'll talk a little bit about PR, but partnerships is also could be paid or not, but that's when you agree, of course, to work with another brand or another person or brand, company to really partner together to collaborate and amplify each other's marketing efforts. I'm going to go into a little bit of detail for some key channels and not all of them, but if you have questions on any specific channels, feel free to ask and also reach out to me via email if you are curious. But for PR, so That's press, right? So let's say, for example, you are a new restaurant and you just open your doors, and here in New York, Grub Street is a local media outlet that covers food and restaurants. And so maybe a journalist there decided to cover the opening of your restaurant and do a little highlight piece on you as a chef, whatever that might be. So that is press, and that's usually free and organic because it is a reach that you didn't really pay for, and it comes with kind of being written up about. And the pros are, of course, it's a huge influence, right? Especially when you're talking about things like backlinking to your website. It builds a lot of domain authority and helps your SEO and helps your website get ranked higher. It's a reputable source. People look to, the New York Times best 5 restaurants, or Eric Wells's top 10 100 whatever restaurants. They're reputable sources, right? Apartment Therapy might write up about top 10 interior designers to look out for. These are really, really great write-ups that help you really get a lot of customers and reach. But the cons are sometimes it's difficult to secure. It might not be worth your time depending on what stage of company building you're in. And it takes time to build relationships with journalists. I actually had to do this at Violet, and it did take a whole year for me to get time with this journalist that I had been building a relationship with. The scary thing about press too sometimes is there's not full control of the narrative. So I once did an interview with a journalist, told her all about this new product launch and this new research that we had coming out. And I did the best I could to kind of frame the story in the way that I wanted it to be framed. But at the end of the day, the journalist could write the piece however she wanted. So I had no control over the narrative. So it was a little nerve-wracking the next day or a week later to kind of read the piece itself because I didn't know exactly how she would frame the piece. It's also unreliable because you just don't know for sure if you're ever going to secure press. And so again, depends on where you're at, if it's really worthwhile to think about kind of the return on investment and whether it's right for you. But it takes, somebody who's done this before to kind of help you decide what's right for you. But you can do that work yourself too and start building relationships with press and journalists that you think are relevant to your business. Organic social. So these are your own social channels. The pros of it, it's free, which is great. We love free. We love free 99. It gives you full control of the narrative and the brand, right? So this is obviously so important, especially if you're just starting out. You really want to build your brand from scratch. So it gives you full control of that. It's really fun and allows for a lot of flexibility and creativity too. What with TikTok, with Reels, it allows also for you to highlight yourself, build yourself as a human. And cons, if you're just starting off, reach can be smaller, of course. It can be a lot of effort to just create one reel, I know. And you don't have the full attention of your customer, right? You don't know. It could get lost in the algorithm and they're scrolling and it just might get lost. Email marketing. Personally, my hot tip is email marketing is king, as everybody knows. So if you're starting off small, start today. Start building your email list. It's going to really pay off in dividends later on down the line when you have a robust database of customers. It's guaranteed delivery usually, which the usually here is a little side note, which is if you want to get really deep into email, I could talk about it for days and days. I love email marketing, and the ins and outs of it sometimes can get a little convoluted, but you want to make sure that you're obviously not blacklisting yourself and guaranteeing yourself delivery. Most of the platforms out there make it pretty simple, the drag and drop, and they pretty much handle all of the backend stuff for you. So don't worry about that. It's long form content, it's not just snackable. So you can really expand on your product, expand on your story, expand on your promotion. It's typically also high quality leads. These people are giving you their email for a reason, mostly unless you're buying lists, which is a totally different thing. I don't personally suggest that, but if you're capturing their email, they're going to be high quality leads and you'll want to nurture them with really incredible emails and campaigns and content or promotions, and you have their full attention if they're opening up their email. Cons can be considered spammy. Pros and cons. That's okay. And sometimes it takes a long time to write good content. It also, again, being careful not to make mistakes that can blacklist your IP and not lead to good things. Your email will forever be lost in spam. So Blog and content marketing. Pros is this really helps you with search engine optimization, right? So having good content, having good kind of like keyword strategies will help your website list higher and higher. And to expand a little bit more on that, sorry if this is like too much detail for folks or stuff that you already know. But basically, when somebody searches for a keyword, local Ohio wedding business, there's going to be a lot of results that show up. You want your website to rank on that first page, even in the first 3 results, like the graph just goes way down percentage wise of likelihood for somebody to click on your website. The further and further down in rankings you go, seems pretty logical. But content can really help you with SEO ranking for your website. It also tells a story, and it also helps meet your customers' needs. So for instance, let's say emotional Eric who's buying a car, he's getting overwhelmed. Maybe you have an article that's like top 3 things to look for when buying a used car, or things that he might be thinking about, and you can help actually use your own authority and your own knowledge and expertise to help meet those needs. And it's also really great for lead generation. So again, lead generation is really about getting that information on your customer. So maybe it's an email, maybe it's a name, etc. But it helps to really start to build out people who are interested in your product or service. Cons, again, can be difficult to execute, takes time to write good content. Although these days there's AI. I've never personally used it before, but that doesn't mean it's wrong or bad. People can help you write good content. And I guess AI is doing it now, which is a little scary, but they can do that. I will caveat though, with SEO, they are very, very smart. Google's very smart, and they can pretty much suss out usually content that's written by a person or content that is not written by a person. So just something to keep in mind if that's a route that you want to go down. There's nothing wrong with that. The most important thing, though, when thinking about this is ask yourself, what do I want from my customer and what action do I want them to take, which is CTA, call to action. So using these 2 questions, let's start mapping out like, okay, I have all these channels, I know the pros and cons, but like where and when do I do them? Great question. So this is where we take a look at the marketing funnel. So this is a typical marketing funnel that you can just find online. For some folks, this might be too many steps. Maybe it's just awareness, interest, and purchase. You'll determine what's right for you or work with someone to help you determine what are the steps that are right for you. But this funnel really starts to help you understand, okay, at what point am I doing what, and what's the purpose of what I am doing? You can also quickly Google search, like, what are typical tactics or channels that fall within each of these phases. But together, I'm going to walk through a practical example with you of how I might build out this funnel for a business. So let's go back to Joe's Insurance really quickly. We remember we've got Bob, we've got Donna. Those are our 2 kind of people who we're thinking about when I'm trying to market Joe's Insurance. I'm going to go back to the marketing funnel here, and I'm going to say under awareness. For Bob, I realize that he reads the local newspaper every single day. So maybe I'll purchase an ad in the local newspaper to talk about Joe's Insurance. Great. He is now aware of my business. And that's all I want him to know. Awareness is really just about getting my name out there, building my brand awareness, and just having kind of your name in the back of somebody's mind. And so maybe when they meet that life stage of what they need you for, they'll remember you, they'll be able to recall your name. The next thing I might do is maybe I'll sponsor a local soccer team. I don't know. And that might help reach Donna, the mom whose kids play on the local soccer team. And I know that that's a great way to reach my persona or my target audience. This is all just very hypothetical. I can't say I would actually do this for Joe's Insurance, but I'm just trying to enumerate for you an example of how to think of each phase and what are some of the tactics I would utilize. Interest phase. This is where, okay, somebody actually might want to use Joe's Insurance. Like previously, I wasn't needing to shop for insurance, but now I am. So maybe it's because I just moved homes and I need new homeowners insurance, let's say. So maybe I'm actually working with a real estate broker and I'm partnering with them to say, hey, every time you help a new customer move into a new home, please give them my brochure and recommend Joe's Insurance. That's a really great way to meet them at that life stage. That life stage is also something you would identify through kind of your persona building and also your buyer's journey to say, like, what are the steps that this person's taking? What are the kind of the moments in their day-to-day lives, and how do I reach them, right? Consideration. Okay, so now this person is really trying to figure out, how do I buy insurance, or where do I go to buy insurance? I'm trying to really suss out the best option for me. Maybe you offer a free webinar. That's a great place to get interest and high quality leads. You'll capture their email, and then you can then build them into a nurture email campaign and start to get them to become a customer. Maybe you also have a blog post on your website that says how to choose the best insurance policy for you. And, Donna clicks on it, and then they come to your company and they're like, I kind of want to fill out some more information here and get some understanding of Joe's insurance. The final phase here, I might think like, okay, so now this person really wants to purchase. What are the things and places that they're going to be, and how do I really create a great experience? So maybe I have an easy to use website. Maybe I have I train my staff really, really well. So when they come through the doors, they are really well versed. Maybe I have open hours on the weekend because I know that Donna's so busy during the week, she can't make it. Maybe I open up my store on hours that she can make. And then maybe I have really great takeaway brochures in the office so that they can take them away and consider some more. So really quick overview of how you might think about utilizing the marketing funnel and beginning to really build out the different tactics that you would do to meet your buyer where they are. But some tips here are: keep it simple. It doesn't have to be too complicated. I showed you all of that because I want to have you understand all the different steps, but sometimes keeping it simple is great. Focus then on the most important part of the funnel. Maybe you've identified that you don't need to do any brand awareness. It doesn't matter because you have such a great life stage. Maybe it's about working with real estate brokers and really getting that brochure in the right hands, right? You don't have to do it all at once either. You can launch one part of the funnel, you can launch another part of the funnel. We'll go through a little bit of that in detail, and make sure to keep your brand consistent. So this is where your messaging matrix is going to really help you out, because you've already built out all of the different language and ways in which you talk about your business. Okay, you're ready to launch. Let's talk about it. So whether you are launching your entire marketing strategy, so let's say you're a whole new business and you're launching everything for the first time, or maybe you're already an established business and you're just launching a new product, there are various ways in which you might handle that. But my tips for if you are launching your entire kind of marketing funnel or your business for the very first time, there are, of course, a lot of steps that come before this, like identifying your brand and your visual identity and all of that good stuff, that positioning statement we talked about, even building your product, etc. But let's say you're ready to do your go-to-market strategy. I would recommend starting with your owned channels, again, because these are essentially free. I mean, of course, you have to pay for platforms and for the time and effort spent on these channels, but for all intents and purposes, it's pretty free. So start with that, right? Get it right. And this is really key because, for example, at Violet, our biggest metric, the thing that I do with all of my marketing efforts, is I really want to get my customer to book a demo. Because once they book a demo, we get on a call with them. We know we can do our sales pitch, and that kind of moves over to our sales team. But I then, knowing that I want somebody to book a demo on our website, I then focused first and foremost, not on any marketing or paid stuff. I just focused on getting that demo form right. So I was on my website, making sure that at every page, the customer knew where to find the demo button. Once they clicked the demo button, did it make sense? Was the form too long? Was the form too short? Was it confusing? What copy did I have next to the form? What imagery did I have? I really focused on optimizing that piece to make sure that I was getting it right. So for example, if you're an e-com platform or you sell, clothing online, make sure to start with the basics and understand, is your buying process easy? Can the customer, once they're on your website, easily purchase? Is it easy for them to enter in their credit card information? Luckily, a lot of this is also pre-packaged with a lot of the platforms out there like Squarespace, but it is worth going through the experience yourself and making sure that you're optimizing your own channels, because I would hate for you to spend a bunch of money or a bunch of time and effort on getting people to your website and then nobody does anything, right? So focus on that. And then with doing that, you get a lot of learnings and data. So all of this is pretty cyclical. I want to emphasize that everything is iterative. So you always want to be changing and learning as you go and tweaking and making changes and testing and learning, right? The thing that shouldn't really change is your positioning, your mission, your vision, right? That should stay pretty constant. But then your go-to-market strategy, you have to learn how to pivot and really understand, okay, this isn't working. Something's got to change here. I got to learn more. And that's about going through the data. And so if you're launching with your own channels, let's say you have an Instagram account, you can go through and look at who are the people who are engaging with your Instagram, right? So getting learnings and data and keeping that loop of learning going. And then once you feel like you have a pretty solid kind of basis for those two things, begin testing with paid channels. And again, somebody can help you advise on where to begin, but start small and just start learning. I think the biggest thing that I've learned from working at various brands is that sometimes the best learning isn't research, it's just doing the thing and seeing if it works, right? So start small, begin testing, and see if you can get any learnings doing that. Launching a new product, pretty similar, honestly, but here there are some other considerations too, which again, I think both are pretty applicable, but I'm going to segment this out. So starting with segmentation, who of your customers will this matter to most? So maybe you have 3 different personas and you're launching a new product. Really be aware of who you're launching it to. It might matter more. So maybe you want to segment your emails down to just people who signified that they were interested in this type of thing, and then maybe you built a new service that's relevant to them. You probably don't want to email blast everybody. Maybe you just want to email blast those people. It makes sense because you don't want to burn out all of your customers all the time. And figure out what your call to action is. What action do you want your customers to take? Do you have a dedicated landing page experience? How do you want to measure effectiveness? Really think through what is the behavior you want them to do. Maybe it's just purchasing, and that's also fine. And then ensure your timing day of launch. So this is something that a lot of folks don't really think through until they get to the day of the launch. And then they're scrambling and like, wait, hold on, I have a link here that's leading to this website and the website's not live, or et cetera, vice versa. So really make sure that you're ensuring your timing day of launch. And I've provided a couple templates for you to take away. But here's one example that I've built for Violet, which was a template that we used to ensure all of our teams were on the same page when we were launching our new benchmarking framework, which was a service we offered. So it really kind of broke down who was doing what when. But a more kind of smaller version of this, and this is again the template that I'll share with you all, is going through when the thing's happening, at what time, what channel, who you're talking to, what you're saying, and what's their call to action. So this really begins to understand, you then begin to understand what order you need to do things. So for instance, if you have a press embargo with I called it blah, a media outlet, and that goes at 6 a.m., then you know that right at 6 a.m., your website has to go live too, because you know everybody who's coming from that press release is going to your website. Okay, cool. So you have a dedicated landing page maybe. You also have a website brag bar. So for any current customers who are coming to your website, that's live as well. Then at 7 a.m., maybe you're emailing all of your prospects, the people who have never purchased before, and you're like, hey, we just got written up in blah. So again, that comes after. And so you want to time everything to make sure that all of the different pieces are working together to maximize the impact of what you are announcing. All right. That was a lot, and I might have gone a little over time, but I know we have 12 minutes left for questions. I will
It,
now open it up.
Thank you, Ren. This was great. We do have a lot of questions, so we are going to get through as many as we can. So thank you all for submitting. And let's see, I think a good place to start will be someone in the Q&A asked early on about demographics versus psychographics. So the behaviors, traits, lifestyles of the customer versus their age, location, those types of things. So of these kinds of data, how do you recommend an entrepreneur balance those in a go-to-market strategy?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So I recommend keeping it super, super simple. And sometimes it matters based off of what your product or service is. So for example, if you have, let's say, jewelry, Maybe there is no age limit to that, right? So that's not going to be a demographic that you might care about. But maybe it's about attitudinal beliefs. Maybe it's you're really trying to target folks who like artisanal, local crafts. That then is a psychographic belief that you should really surround yourself around. You can build a persona that's fictional that might focus on one type of demographic just to help you understand. But at that point, when you're selling jewelry, it doesn't matter if they have kids or if they're single or if they have, XYZ thing. But let's say your jewelry is very, very expensive. That's where income might come into play. And you might want to understand a little bit more about that. So it also depends on kind of like the campaign itself. So if you're just doing email marketing, maybe you can use one attribute to really like tailor and target your messaging. And maybe you can even at that point use behaviors, right? So for instance, a segmentation I might use is somebody who came to my, gave me their email but never made a purchase. So to me, that would be like a prospect or abandoned cart or whatever that might be. And at that point, you would actually use a behavioral element to target and segment and say, I'm going to actually offer a $5 off coupon at this point to get those folks to come back and buy. And so I hope that answered your question, but it's a little bit of a give and take. And the biggest main takeaway is keep it simple.
Yeah, that absolutely answered the question, and it with this attitude towards balance. So thank you. And I think in that same vein, we had Alexa in the Q&A ask about niches. And so if you are a business that wants to get in front of more customers and you want to go bigger, how do you balance that when you've identified that you do have kind of a niche niche customer base, sorry.
Yeah. Well, I guess the question is, what's the reasoning behind wanting to expand? Is it wanting to get more revenue, or is it just about kind of thinking that you have just kind of this desire? I guess I asked that to say there's probably different ways to approach it. Sometimes it might be about expanding your services and offerings, but that's again where your kind of mission, values, and positioning really has to stay as your North Star, because you don't want to deviate away from diluting your brand or not following up on your brand promise to your current customers. That might turn away some of your customers. So think about, is the expanding to new audiences or new folks or targets relevant to your brand? If so, okay, how can you then begin to offer new services or offerings? Or begin to understand your new target and break down again, what are their psychographic beliefs? What do they really care about? And maybe there's actually new value props about your company that you never really thought resonated with somebody, but you're like, oh my gosh, that hits on that pain point for this person. Let me now actually start tailoring messaging around that. So you might unlock new ways to talk about your business and new value propositions that didn't exist before because you were just talking to one specific customer.
I like that. I like what you just said, because it sounds like, some of these things, these foundational things, aren't as set in stone as we might believe.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm constantly building out new value prop messaging based on the testing that I'm doing, especially when I'm entering into a new market, because their needs, wants, motivations, and desires are going to be completely different. And our service might not change or our offering might not change, but their motivations are changing, right? So it's really about then beginning to iterate on your messaging and understanding how do you speak to that new person in their language, so to speak.
Great. And then for the B2B companies tuning in today, how does that go-to-market strategy approach change? And so like, what are some of the special considerations for these types of companies? Like we had someone in the chat say they work with companies and businesses in need of video services. So what does that approach look like?
Yeah, so that is really about understanding the ecosystem of decision makers in the company. So you might, I think a simple Google search will come up with some results, but essentially you want to understand who's your champion, right? So that might be a person who's just really excited about your company and your services, but maybe they don't have the budget or own the budget, and maybe they're not the final decision maker. So you really want to be able to understand. So let's say video services, right? Maybe there's a creative director who is your champion and advocate. Maybe that's the person that you tailor all of your blog posts to. These are the people you reach out to and get demos with. And they then have to champion and advocate for you to their account director. That account director is the budget holder, but to them, they don't care about your creative chops. What they care about is your pricing. They care about your timing and delivery, right? So you want to be able to understand all the different players in your ecosystem, who's doing what, and then tailoring your own messaging to that. So at that point, you want to have a buttoned up pricing presentation. You want to be able to really know what matters to the CFO or the CEO or, so on and so forth. So understanding those people, how to get an in, and then get buy-in all around.
So if someone were to look at your presentation and they had this B2B company, would it then be like they're making these customer profiles for the different decision makers in the business? Is that a good approach? If we
Exactly.
really want to get into the weeds? Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I would build out a persona for maybe 3 key players within the company ecosystem, and then begin to understand what are the things that they care about.
Wonderful. And so we talked a little bit about market research. What tools would you recommend for, especially for our founders who are on a budget? What is kind of the best way to do this research?
Oh, great question. And I will have to follow up with a list because I am very bad at name recall. And so I can't rattle them off right now, but I will definitely provide a list.
Okay, great. And so for everyone that's on today, we'll have some of those in our post-webinar email. So thank you. Let's see. I'm looking through our questions here. Okay, so how can someone properly plan into the ROI of a new product launch? Um, you know, how can businesses set good goals for launches based on the current data that they have, or if they don't really have any data?
Yeah, that's a great question. So with not having a lot of data, that's hard, right? You kind of have to just do it in order to start getting some learnings. And maybe I would suggest going small first. So maybe it's about putting a very small amount of spend behind a paid channel and just seeing what happens. And from there, you have a benchmark, or even sending out your first email campaign and understanding what's your baseline metric for open rates or click-through rates. And then from there, beginning to use that as your basis and just getting better and better. But to determine return on investment or ROI, that's obviously still the omnipresent question that all marketers are asking themselves, which is how do I utilize my channels most efficiently so I get the most bang for my buck? And that is exactly kind of how you've positioned this question, which is you have to really understand what your goal is. And that is so key. And I see a lot of new companies make this mistake, which is they try things, they test things, but they're not really understanding what they're even looking for as success. So as an example, you might be launching a new product, but maybe you're launching a campaign that's not about getting people to actually purchase it because you've realized that in your funnel, it takes people 2 months to make a purchase decision. So to actually measure your campaign based off of purchases might not be the most effective way to determine ROI. Maybe it's actually just about uh, follows or likes, or if you're using that on social, or if you're doing emails, maybe it's just about open rates, or maybe it's even lead generation and capturing leads and making sure that you have a robust email database to nurture and begin to bring them through that 2-month decision buying process. So understanding what's the key thing you're measuring to then begin to determine effectiveness, right? And so then from there, you can kind of do some simple math to say, I put in X amount of dollars and I got Y return. This is then the kind of percentage return that I'm seeing via this channel. And maybe you see that another channel is actually way more effective. You're spending way less money and you're getting way more of the results that you actually want. So it's kind of a little bit of like a test and learn, and really starting from nowhere is the best way to go. You have only up to go from setting those benchmarks.
I really like that reframe of starting from zero is actually an advantage.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, and so moving on to our next question, and this may have to be our last one. How should your promotion strategy change after you've launched?
Oh, well, you should always kind of be testing and learning. So let's say, for example, you launched Memorial Day sale or whatever it is, maybe you launch a 15% off this category of products that you have and you want to see how well it does. Then maybe the next time you actually test, sorry, this is getting really nitty gritty and in the weeds, but maybe you did 15% off first. Then maybe you've actually done the math and that equates to $20. Those numbers actually make a difference. So it's actually very interesting psychology to test little things like that to say, okay, I did 15% off. I'm also going to test $20 off and then see which one does better. And even though to you, revenue wise, it's the same impact, it actually does make a difference in a customer's mind. So that's one way to kind of begin to say, okay, I launched something, but I want to continue growing and learning. And additionally, you might find some stuff like you don't have product market fit, and that's okay. That's actually a big problem that we had at Violet, which was initially we launched this learning platform. We started targeting provider organizations, and we realized we're not getting the traction we need, and it's not really resonating. And the decision-making process is so long that we decided to actually pivot and start talking to health insurance plans. And that was a really big change for us to be able to say, wow, okay, we didn't really quite nail it. And so again, it's about knowing what does success look like and are we getting the most bang for our buck? And then quickly pivoting and changing and trying to learn and grow from there.
Thank you so much for sharing this pivot message and everything. We've gotten so much out of today's session. So thanks again, Ren. And to everyone, thank you all for joining us.